The world faces urgent challenges, with persistent poverty, inequity, and increasing climate risk. Despite great advances in knowledge and technology, billions of people around the world remain vulnerable today, and the natural world is threatened by extractive human exploits. We research how energy transitions are being governed as societal systems undergo transformative change. The Sustainability Transformation Research Group addresses critical aspects of these global challenges. How do we transition towards future energy systems that are low carbon and enable more equitable societies? Energy spans all of our lives, from how we live to how we commute and what we do for work and fun. It powers human activity. Our members across the University of Stavanger and University of Bergen in Norway share a common basis in the interdisciplinary social sciences. We research how energy transitions are being governed as societal systems undergo transformative change.
I'm Siddharth Sareen. I'm an associate professor in energy and environment at the University of Stavanger and an associate professor too at the University of Bergen, where I also work on the governance of energy transitions. I run a research group called Sustainability Transformation across both these institutions. The Sustainability Transformation Research Group works both with weekly meetings online. They're a sort of hybrid form where we some gathered in each room at both ends. And sometimes we have retreats where we all meet, create a space for reflection, for more informal exchange. It's important to challenge each other, to help each other grow, to cultivate our key competencies as researchers. Also to think about what makes work fun, how we balance it with the rest of our lives. Research can be a lonely place, but it doesn't have to be. And something that makes me really happy is to see how members of the team really get along. Some like to go for runs together, some have shared interests in particular hobbies. You can't force it, but you can create the conditions in which collaboration thrives. I like to draw people into particular papers that I'm writing because I think that the work that we do changes when we collaborate, when we work with other people. I think it's really important here on the west coast of Norway to work on the governance of energy transitions. And it's such a massive challenge that we're faced with as society that we have to transition over to low carbon energy systems, not just for one sector, not just for electricity, also transport, also construction, industry, that it's something that we need a lot of people to work on, many competencies. And academia needs to be a place, a breeding ground for the competencies that we need to build tomorrow today.
One of the key motivations in our work is to illustrate how governance conditions the sort of energy future that we build. A major global change in the 2020s is that solar energy has become the largest energy source being added around the world every year. But so far, this change has mainly been happening at large scales and tens and hundreds of hectares allotted to solar plants. This requires building out massive electricity transmission infrastructure to bring solar energy from where it is generated to where it is used. In a review article, we showed that there are scalar biases in the way solar rollout is governed, where it appears that actors in large-scale solar PV rollouts are able to exert greater influence and access more opportunities than actors in small-scale projects, which means larger-scale solar projects benefit from government subsidies, but in turn there is a longer distance to the consumer, which is in contrast to smaller-scale solar projects where the benefit is a shorter distance to the consumer, but it comes at a greater personal cost. Therefore, supportive legislation can enable local ownership and provide a greater share of benefits to ordinary people from the solar energy revolution. Our research shows that decision makers need to build strong, enduring political constituencies for solar energy rollouts to lead to socially inclusive futures. For this, they must pay attention to the justice effects of solar energy at many different spatial scales. The ASSET project stands for Accountable Solar Energy Transitions. It is funded by the Research Council of Norway from 2021 to 2024. Project manager Siddharth Sareen leads a team of 5 people. Postdoc Berenice Girard, PhD candidates René Scharnig-Niven and Shayan Shokozar, as well as associate professors Stephen Wolf and Abigail Martin. The project team is investigating how solar energy can be governed in accountable ways in financially constrained contexts. The 2 cases are the state of Rajasthan in India and the southwestern European country Portugal. Rajasthan is among India's poorest states, while Portugal is recovering from the economic recession of 2008 to 2015. Both have high rates of solar irradiation, as well as ambitious solar rollout targets. Yet, to maintain public support, the solar turnout must bring real benefits to the many households that live in energy poverty in both these contexts. There are many novel aspects to such a comparative project. The team conducts fieldwork at multiple spatial scales, focusing on solar rollout in cities like Jaipur and Lisbon, but also at the subnational and national scale. This brings in many political aspects that are important for understanding accountability. Accountability is about relationships between actors. Comparing contexts as different as India and Portugal enables the team to generate insights about energy development levels and to understand the potential of solar energy to empower people in a variety of ways.
Hello, I'm René Scharnig and I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Stavanger. I came 4 years ago to Norway to study the Master Energy Environmental Society, which was interdisciplinary in nature, and that was a good stepping stone for this PhD, as we had a multitude of different courses from political science, geopolitics. We had as well courses about renewable energy technologies, economics, and all this together made a good context to understand the issues at stake during a transition, such as the one we're seeing now. My research project is Accountable Solar Energy Transitions, and I'm interested in researching gender and feminism and justice issues in the solar energy rollout in Portugal. The reason it's important to take into account gender and feminism in solar energy rollouts is because the current solar energy rollout has the potential to solve potentially broader issues in society. Portugal, like other countries, have a complex context, which is important to understand to carry out fieldwork. I'm going to do the fieldwork where I'm going to do ethnography and trying to understand the processes around the solar energy rollout there in order to produce some novel insights into how a more just transition is possible.
In recent years, the concept of energy poverty has gained policy attention. A lot of this has been due to work by the European Energy Poverty Network Engager. This paper is one of the network's outputs. It reflects on the ways in which energy poverty is measured and what things are important to consider as countries adopt various indicators of energy poverty. Our choice of indicators matters because this decides what aspects are measured, and these measurements in turn are used to make decisions that impact people's lives. Using cases from Spain, Portugal, and the UK, the paper shows how complex historical trajectories have shaped existing energy poverty metrics. These metrics have wide coverage, which leads to data flattening, making it hard to understand the impacts on individual users, as it tends to neglect diversity and ignore contextuality. Policymakers try to balance this with context specificity in indicators to ensure contextualized identification of energy poverty. The paper argues for a balance between these tendencies in order to develop new forms of representation and to ensure their policy uptake for real-world impact. This, in turn, can help to better identify and alleviate energy poverty.
So my name's Shayan Shokozar. I'm a PhD candidate at the Center for Climate and Energy Transformations, the University of Bergen. I'm part of a Research Council of Norway funded project called ASSET, Accountable Solar Energy Transitions. Yeah, so my research focus is primarily on solar rollout in the state of Rajasthan in northwestern India. So I am primarily trying to look at why is it that large-scale projects, ultra-mega-scale projects, for example, like the Badla solar farm, which is the largest solar farm in the world, are being implemented at such a fast scale, essentially, while medium to small-scale projects are kind of being, in some ways, pushed to the wayside, or not prioritized at least. Because there's some really great projects that are working on rural electrification, kind of like through decentralized methods. And solar infrastructure has this capacity to, because it's modular, to be implemented in a decentralized way. And a country like India, where you have such a vast rural population, that might not necessarily have grid connectivity to be able to essentially take energy through those. And not just that, but also have a higher level of community engagement.
The group is a good example of collaboration across universities. Building bridges between research on the governance on energy transitions in Stavanger and Bergen has led to several important developments along the west coast of Norway. We have established the Just Mobility Transitions Network, Just MobNet, and helped to secure funding for the Empowered Futures PhD Research School until 2030, where both universities are partners. We also hold externally funded projects with research teams in both cities and conduct comparative research on these medium-sized cities with interesting differences in their historical legacies and modern-day challenges. Several of our team members work closely together. The group's thematic focus is highly relevant to the core missions of both universities regarding global challenges and green transitions, and our engagement serves as a way to enable joint learning and cross-cutting initiatives. This sort of exchange enriches day-to-day activities in both places, for instance through a reading group put together by Cheyenne and Berenice.
My name is Berenice Girard. I'm a postdoctoral fellow here at the University of Stavanger. Since finishing my PhD, I've been working mostly on urban energy transitions in India. What I'm planning to do is work on what I call the market for solar. The idea is that when the transition to renewable energies is not something that is in the future, it's something that is happening now, and so the question is not how do we make the transition to renewable energies happen, is like how is it happening? And one of the very interesting things with renewable energies, and especially with solar, is that it's scalable. Which means that we can imagine decentralized production, we can have smaller power plants, we can have even solar panels on our roofs, and so we can imagine different ways of producing energy and producing electricity. And so renewable energies and solar in particular have this potential for transformation, right? For rethinking our energy systems and for making them perhaps more just and more democratic. And so this is one of the things that I am, but I think we all are very interested in.
The group contributes cutting-edge work at the frontier of research on governing energy transitions. This paper is an example of a contribution that combines conceptual ambition with an empirical basis. The paper makes an argument for how to understand accountability, as a combination of deliberative assessment backed by the ability and willingness to sanction. It points out that such a strong version of accountability is not always found in practice. Instead, accountability can be hollow or give way to authoritarianism or libertarianism, each with its own set of dangers. A case of solar energy transitions shows how a mix of these different relationships operates simultaneously within a given context to bring about change. The aim of such an argument is to challenge future research to analyze sustainability transitions in terms of the nature of governance and use a nuanced understanding of accountability to characterize change. By identifying particular practices that support or hinder strong accountability, research can critique developments and identify pathways for improved outcomes. This sort of conceptual insight has implications beyond the energy sector for any given sustainability transformation.
Societal impact is really important for the work that we do in the group. The concerns that we work on are related to environmental and social equity and justice. They're some of the most pressing issues of our time. How do we change large, complex infrastructures, socio-technical systems where our day-to-day practices are deeply embedded in the kinds of existing infrastructure? While at the same time, our very lives, our existence as we know it, is threatened by some of that same infrastructure in its current configuration. How do we move from that over to systems that are more people-centric, that are more equipped to take us into the kind of society we want to live in, where we have less greenhouse gas emissions, where we have people feeling more of a sense of ownership over the key infrastructure and services that we use in our day-to-day lives. That's one of the main challenges that we work on. When I'm doing field work, which is something I enjoy immensely, I often find myself talking to people who've spent 20, 30 years deeply specialized in a particular sector, in a particular field, and there's no way that I could ever know at the same depth as them the things that they work with. What I have is the benefit of being able to talk to many such people and to have funded time to work with the insights that I gather in that process, to speak with other colleagues who have worked on similar domains and to benefit from their competence in a related field. And in that way, academia can be a place where we can cultivate meaningful reflection, where we can build collaborations of a sort that are rarely possible in working life outside of academia.
This paper brings together work on two different sectors in cities, using a focus on digitalization and social inclusion during sustainability transitions. In Bergen, the case is smart transport transitions to electrify the transport sector and power it using low-carbon energy sources. This has been controversial because the kinds of measures introduced have led to winners and losers and challenged existing practices. In Lisbon, the case is smart electricity transitions, increasing renewable energy content on the electric grid in a way that benefits energy-poor households. This has been challenging because some measures tend to mainly benefit those who are well off in an unequal context. The paper approaches both these cases of digitalization by asking questions of vulnerability and empowerment strategies and exploring them in novel ways. The focus on digitalization and social inclusion draws out some key policy recommendations from the study to show how decision makers in each city could support vulnerable users and make the transport and energy sectors more socially inclusive at the same time as moving to low-carbon energy sources. The paper also highlights the importance of using a range of mixed methods for data collection in order to yield in-depth empirical insights about energy transitions. It provides a timely example of how researchers can investigate the societal effects of digitalization across multiple energy-related sectors.
My name is Morten. I'm from Norway, and I am a quite new PhD candidate here at the University of Stavanger, where we are now. And I'm working through SET and on the project called ROLES, Responsive Organization of Low Emission Societies. I research shared mobility in a local scale here in Stavanger and in Bergen, and I guess my entry point into these kinds of questions and these kinds of topic is motivated by the notion of living in a transitioning time where not only the technical part of society is changing through new technologies, digitalization, and new modes of, for example, transport in this context of mobility, but also how that is also very much a social change. And I think for a social scientist, these are the more interesting, at least, and maybe also the more important questions. How do we change the way we live? How do we change the way we move about? And how do we change the way we interact with each other and the environment around us?
The ROLES project stands for Responsive Organizing for Low-Emission Societies. It is funded by the Joint Programming Initiative Climate through national research councils in Norway, Italy and the UK. In Norway, the project spans Bergen and Stavanger, examining digitalizations and low-carbon transitions in urban mobility. This focus on digitalization in low-carbon transitions is applied to smart electric meter rollout in Trento and to solar energy rollout in Brighton. Across all the cases, the project partners, the University of Bergen, the University of Stavanger, EURAC Research and the University of Sussex are analyzing the ways in which digitalization of energy systems can be socially inclusive. Despite being based across 3 countries, the project uses no flights to ensure low carbon emissions from research. The project team of more than a dozen people meets online every month. Midway through the project, everyone meets in person using surface transport to another medium-sized city in the middle, Groningen in the Netherlands. All the case cities are medium-sized in recognition of where many people live, whereas previous research has often focused on a few large cases. We work closely with diverse stakeholders in the places where team members are based. This has allowed us to continue research during the pandemic and also to hold intensive discussions with wide networks of actors. As we deepen our insights of each case, the project team is increasingly identifying aspects that cut across these cases to generate an understanding of pathways to digitalize for deep decarbonization. These pathways are meant to be applicable to medium-sized cities across Europe and beyond, as they digitalize their own energy systems to ensure a socially inclusive, smart energy future.
My name is Devin Remy. I am a doctoral candidate working out of CET, the Center for Climate and Energy Transformations. My PhD research focuses on the global implications of the Nordic EV revolution, both social and environmental impacts. My prior research was part of a research project called Just Mob, which is social justice and mobility transitions. One of the major issues is that when there are stationary private interests, for example, a food truck or a store, then the city can charge rent for the use of public space, for example, the street. But the e-scooters can move, so they didn't have the right tools to be charging rent, even though the private companies are able to extract rent by using the commons, the public space that belongs to all of us. Even though we belong to so many different disciplines and we're working on so many different sectors, all of us are working towards transforming societies towards decarbonization and towards socially just futures that reconcile development with the biosphere.
A lot of the research on sustainability transitions struggle to keep up with the breakneck pace of change in the world today, especially as sectors such as energy evolve so rapidly. This paper takes up one such case of electric scooters, which have been rolled out in Bergen as in many cities worldwide. Importantly, it brings 3 sets of scholarship into closer conversation: innovation studies, micropolitics research, and theories of commoning. This provides the basis to understand how the micromobility market is made. This insight is crucial for public debates on whether this development benefits various users, and if so, in what ways. The paper employs a novel framework to study digitalization at the urban scale by focusing on knowledge, authority, and power. It traces the emergence of electric scooters and their regulation during a controversial period in the transport sector across cities in Norway. The study brings forth a range of perspectives from focus group discussions, expert interviews, and seminars. It shows that the failure of regulations to keep pace with innovation lead to the need to remake the micromobility market in socially just ways that advance urban sustainability agendas. Sustainability transformation is an urgent but challenging societal ambition of unprecedented scope. Correspondingly, the Sustainability Transformation Group conducts research on a broad set of relevant themes. Beyond the glimpses captured in this film and the multiple projects and research funded by the Research Council of Norway, we are part of a number of exciting partnerships. We play a role in a project to build capacity on energy transitions in East Africa, funded by the Norwegian Agency for Development Cooperation until 2026. We are conducting social impact assessment of pro-poor community-scale solar energy rollouts in 4 European countries as part of the Eurosolar for All project funded by the European Commission. We're also a part of the steering group for 2 cost actions on positive energy districts and energy poverty. We host a number of postdoctoral, PhD and master projects related to energy transitions governance in a range of countries. We are deeply involved in relevant teaching initiatives, developing and running our own thematic courses, and partnering teaching networks funded through Norplus with Baltic country partners. Across this broad set of endeavors, we exercise our core competence in ethnographic research with conceptual rigor, policy relevance, and societal impact.
One of the starting points for energy social science is to recognize that energy is and has always been a deeply political and politicized concern. The energy sector has changed dramatically and rapidly over the past few years. We have possibilities today that even a decade ago were the stuff of dreams. We can have energy systems that are distributed, decentralized, not only in terms of their geography, in terms of their spatial configuration, but also in terms of their ownership. We can have bottom-up systems, we can have a mix of large and small and community-scale energy systems, and that's something that can open up immense possibilities for the use of human agency, for people's capacity to aspire, for people to lead better lives, to be more in control of their own lives, to make decisions with a sense of autonomy, to be freed up.
So, what role does all of our effort play in informing and steering the changes underway in society in today's energy systems? These systems are going to change no matter what. At stake is how these changes impact different groups of people, especially the most vulnerable to inequity and climate risk in the many forms these take. Our task as researchers is to grasp the full extent of the challenges that we are faced with and the solutions that are within our grasp. Further, we need to bring the full weight of knowledge to bear on the manner in which societies choose between options available to us in order to create public benefits. We cannot afford to create an energy future that reproduces current inequities and exclusions, but must use this opportunity to build socially inclusive systems powered by low-carbon sources that create the conditions for meaningful living on our planet. From the west coast of Norway, the Sustainability Transformation Group's work connects us with like-minded others across the world to make this happen.